Welcome everyone to our second panel focusing on technologies for patient safety. We're going to have a great group that will be able to comment about the range of technologies that are being used and some of the breakthrough technologies that seem to be appearing now to try and tighten up the medical supply chain. Our panelists today are Steve Halliday, president of RAIN RFID Alliance, as you can see from his banner. Great background. I should have a Spartan behind me, but I don't. Thank you for coming. We also have Blair Korman, senior manager of digital identification and traceability from Johnson & Johnson Supply Chain. So Blair, thank you very much for attending. I like your background as well. And Gwen has a wonderful background as well. Looks like the real deal, however. Gwen Volpe is Director of Medication Technology for Fresenius Kabi USA. So we really appreciate everyone being here today to talk about that technology. So let me begin with Steve to introduce yourself for a second or two, maybe talk about what the RAIN RFID Alliance is all about.
Absolutely, thanks, Bill. Yes, my name is Steve Halliday. I am the president of the RAIN RFID Alliance. The Alliance is an organization that was founded back in 2014 to be a marketing alliance of companies interested in passive UHF RFID. At this point, we have about 160 members from all around the world. Those members are involved in everything from making the ICs that go on tags, all the way through tags, readers, systems, solutions, and end users. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those end users. The technology is used in many different applications, from healthcare, obviously, that's why we're here today, through retail, food, electronics, aviation, and many more. And the goal of what we're trying to do here is to provide a very inexpensive way for you to identify items, things. We've all heard of the Internet of Things, and RAIN provides that endpoint that allows you to identify that item, to actually walk with that item, to understand where it is, who it is, and what it can do. So the Alliance has done a lot of things working with companies involved in healthcare. We have a website, rainrfid.org. You're welcome to go and visit the website and see the many areas. We have a healthcare section up on that website. It talks about many of the things that you can do and see. There are lots of resources, lots of case studies talking about the use of the technology in healthcare. We have a full membership directory up there, which you can go and visit and see, not just see the members, but understand what they provide and how they can help you do what you want to do. We have a request for help page. So if you are thinking about being involved with the technology, you can fill out the page and actually get input from real solution providers, real manufacturers of equipment who can tell you all about what you need to be able to solve your problem. And then a great resource we have for everybody is our ebook. It's linked right there from the home page. A lot of pages of information about the technology, about the members, about who supplies things and how it all works. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that we are having our own virtual event on the 9th and 10th of December, and we invite all of you to attend. 2 days of presentations and expo hall. Registration is supposed to go live tomorrow, fingers crossed, the web people allowing it all to happen, of course. But we're looking forward to some great presentations, many of which will be involved in healthcare and what's happening in healthcare. So again, it's rainrfid.org, and we invite you to come and join us there. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Dr. Anthony Scott has joined us as well, who is the Assistant Pharmacy Officer at the University of Chicago Medicine. We heard from Dr. Hope earlier this morning on her perspectives on it. So Dr. Scott, could you introduce yourself for a second and tell people where you're at and kind of what your thoughts are?
Yeah, my My name is Dr. Anthony Scott. Nice to meet you all again. Assistant Director of Pharmacy Operations here at the University of Chicago Medical Center. We are on the south side of Chicago. With my role, we deal a lot with technology and safety strategies and structures to provide safe patient care from an inpatient pharmacy perspective. And so my team consists of pharmacists, technicians, and leaders who are all working together to kind of operate our centralized distribution model here and try to, as we say here at the University of Chicago, be at the forefront of medicine to provide excellent patient care. And so my day-to-day is mostly focused on overseeing the systems and structures and technology platforms to make sure things are integrated, the different interfaces and systems are talking to each other, data is being managed appropriately. We've got the right people in the right places to get the job done and make sure that we're all working seamlessly to not only provide patient care, but do it on a safely and more efficient manner. And so that's kind of our stand in terms of what we see on the hospital side and how we're trying to utilize technology and other different methods to provide safe patient care on a daily basis.
Wonderful, wonderful. We'll be here to hear more about that. Gwen, can you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what Fresenius Kabi is doing with Rain Smart labels on their products, pretty breakthrough stuff?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. So my name is Gwen Volpe, and I'm Director of Medication Technology for Fresenius Kabi. I'm also a pharmacist, a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, and a fellow of ASHP. Fresenius Kabi has a portfolio of Rfid-enabled pharmaceutical products recently into the market, and I have been involved in the entire process. We are using RAIN RFID and GS1 RFID EPC standards and bring that perspective to the conference today.
Wonderful. That's great. Blair, please.
Thanks, Bill. So hi, everyone. Blair Korman. I work for Johnson & Johnson in the supply chain. My role is in the digital identification and traceability team. And from all of those words, it really lines up nicely, I think, with the group here today and all the things that we're trying to do. Because I think technology within our supply chain is really being driven by a lot of the regulations that are out there and better product identification that's stemming from our compliance arms and regulatory arms of our manufacturing companies that all participate in this world. My experience is in the supply chain. I've spent about 25 years, most of my career, working directly in the supply chain of various functions. I have an engineering background, a couple of degrees, and have spent half my time implementing some of these solutions. And now I'm in a point where I'm helping shape and guide the implementation of solutions and development of them. My day job is all around serialization and making sure that we comply with our regulations in the pharmaceutical sector of our business within serialization, most particularly in the Americas group, but I do interface with our global teams as well. Outside of just the Americas on everything serialization. I think that's a big driver for the topic today with technology and applying that engineering hat. We're working on lots of sensor technologies and smart labels within the pharmaceutical sector of the business, but most specifically for me, similar to Gwen, we have some RFID solutions within J&J supply chain implemented in the med device sector. And there's lots of ways to implement RFID. I love talking to the folks at RAIN and the standardizations that they lean on from a GS1 perspective. And as we really look at the end-to-end supply chain, I think a lot of what I talk about today and may contribute to the panel is all about why it's so important to be able to implement a solution that does not work for your part of the supply chain, but for the pieces of the supply chain that may be before or after, going all the way from manufacturing to the customer. And we have to work together to do that. So hopefully can provide a little bit of perspective on that. We're big believers in everything that GS1, shares with our industry and hoping to add some value in the conversation today. So nice to be here.
Yeah, thank you. It's an impressive panel that's, I think, very highly well qualified to talk about the value of this technology. So one of the comments that just popped up really talks about the fact that why would anybody use barcodes when RFID is available? But the real question is a business model one. And the comment is perhaps the business model for certain manufacturers relies on the legacy barcode system And so the question is, are they unable to move over? Are they unwilling to do it? Is it a business decision? What are some of the factors, Mike, Steve, that seem to make it difficult for people to make the switch from the barcode to the RFID?
It's an interesting question, and I think there are lots of factors in the answer. Obviously, many companies are already invested in a barcode system. And if you ask them to change systems, there's always a lot of reluctance to do that, no matter what you're changing from and to. The good news is that many of those companies that make barcode readers are also involved in the RAIN industry and have handhelds that will read both a barcode and a RAIN reader. So it can be a progressive change as you move forward. What people fail to think about sometimes is the extra benefits that using RFID can bring to you. When you think about a barcode, everyone goes, it's free. Well, of course, it's not actually free, but it is a very low-cost data identifier. But for the most part, barcodes are identifying lots of things. So every single packet of drugs of Tylenol on the shelf all has the same barcode on it. So there is no easy way of detecting that this came from this batch and that one came from that batch. When you move over to RFID, you have that unique number for each item associated with everything. Right. So now we can provide all sorts of new resources, not just an inventory. There are 6 on the shelf and 15 in the back room or whatever, but 6 on the shelf that came from these batch numbers. And oh, by the way, that batch got recalled. So we can actually go out and know that they're on the actually out on the shelf, out on the floor, and recall them. We also have the ability, of course, with RFID to read many items effectively at the same time. So instead of just pointing a barcode at something and saying, barcode reader, and saying, oh, I can read that number, now we can say, oh, well, there are 46 items here on the shelf. Instant inventory. And with fixed readers mounted in the ceiling or on doors or whatever, we can track location and inventory in real time.
Yeah, and that's, the time issue is an interesting one and a question that pops up often. And I would ask Dr. Scott to maybe comment on this. I know keeping track of pharmaceuticals is very time consuming. How much time are pharmacists spending on medication inventory management versus direct patient care? I mean, you see this kind of trade-off that occurs and sort of the consequences of that?
Yeah, we've definitely seen the shift. I've been a pharmacist over, about 12 years now, and I've seen the shift going more toward direct patient care. But in my opinion, we are still spending a little bit too much time dealing with direct medication inventory, supply chain items within our pharmacy. From my perspective in the hospital, in our central pharmacy, we've got pharmacists checking medications, sorting medications, getting medications ready to go upstairs into the automated dispensing cabinets and being distributed throughout the satellite locations within the hospital and things of that nature. So it's a lot of time. I mean, we want our practitioners practicing at the top of their licenses. And so, enabling them to do that, you're going to have to bring in more technology. You're going to have to bring in more machinery that allows them to, have less manual manipulation of medications and triaging medications, making sure that things are accurate in terms of expiration dates and does the dose match the label and patient information and those kind of things like that. And so we do see that being a lot of the time. I would say on a good day in our central pharmacy, the pharmacists are spending maybe 25 to 35% of their day handling medication inventory and helping to manage that. So that's a pretty high number for us. So we would like to be moving that in the other direction. And so we've got some work to do there, but there's definitely a lot of opportunity there in the current state.
Right. No, very interesting statistic is just, how do you just sort of move it in the other direction, more toward direct hours and patient care? I was talking with Gwen earlier about this issue and how Fresenius Kabi has made the breakthrough decision to incorporate RAIN Smart labels into their products. And I think also, I think Blair talked about the fact that Johnson & Johnson is moving in that direction as well. So why RAIN RFID, why GS1, and what outcomes were you guys trying to achieve by doing this?
Well, for Fresenius Kabi, we want to ensure that we continue to innovate to improve patient safety, efficiency for our customers, our technology vendor partners, and supply chain partners. And we recently announced a planned portfolio of OR-focused products with a smart label, which augments our GS1 barcodes with RAIN RFID technology that really enables that wireless drug identification and unit of use level serialization using RAIN RFID and GS1 RFID EPC standards. We chose RAIN UHF RFID for its high quality, high performance, and Internet of Things readiness. It's so important for drugs to be identified easily and quickly. And RAIN RFID has the nimbleness that allows us to put the right amount of data that healthcare requires without sacrificing speed or performance. We did a lot of market research on as we moved down the path of RFID. And from that, we know that our customers who use RFID medication tracking systems were manually applying tags, were associating drug data to that tag, they were double checking that information, which is really tedious and time consuming. And we wanted to eliminate that manual error prone activities using that same reliable GS1 standards that pharma relies upon for barcodes today. And this allows us to provide a really ready to read RFID tag with standardized drug information that is validated in our manufacturing plants using CGMP processes. And lastly, the Office of the National Coordinator for Health Information Technology published the final information blocking rule. And that really validated for us the path we were chose to go down. We want to ensure that anyone can read the information about our drugs like they do for our barcodes. No proprietary software or numbering systems, no cloud requirements for siloed databases, and no cost for fulfilling data requests. Simply just read it. And this enables innovation. And so think about how many companies innovated for patient safety and efficiency by simply scanning the GS1 barcode on pharma products throughout the supply chain. And imagine what will happen with RFID and the innovation that's going to surround that. So it's really exciting.
And so obviously you've gotten some good feedback, I think, from some of the healthcare organizations. Can you comment a little bit about what kind of feedback you've received and what kind of acceptance?
Yeah, we've received a lot of great feedback and a lot of support from customers, from vendors, from supply chain partners. So it's been really, really exciting time for us.
Yeah, excellent. I would ask Blair to follow up from J&J's perspective in terms of what have been your experiences in sort of dealing with supply chain challenges and sort of what are the lessons learned in maybe applying some of these technologies? Where is J&J headed in this area?
Yeah, so I guess a good place to start is it's probably really good timing to talk about it, but I started down this RFID journey about 4 or 5 years ago from a colleague at our company who has since retired. So he sort of handed the baton to me. And he had gotten involved in RFID in particular back in the Walmart days when Walmart was asking many of its customers to, jump on the RFID bandwagon. Well, we all know, I learned, and you all know who lived through it, that didn't go very well. It was a technology that was a great idea, and I think it still has, hope, but it was requested without a lot of standardization around the request. So, the frequency, the proprietary software that Gwen talked about, all of those things that sort of got thrown in the way of an interoperable end-to-end supply chain, I don't think we're finally laid out in those early days of RFID. Unfortunately, I think within the healthcare supply chain, the technology wasn't adopted at that time for many reasons, but I think one of the interesting things about our supply chain is it's complicated. And when we look at the life cycle of a product and whose hands it touches throughout the whole supply chain, all the way to the point where Dr. Scott gives it to a patient and that patient then takes it home. It needs all of us to technology in general, not just RFID, but needs all of us to work in an interoperable format. And I think that's where we really rely on GS1. And it's more about, it's not just about the frequency, it's about what kind of data do you put on the tag. We want predictable information to be read. We want information to come off of that RFID chip that everyone's used to and everyone can see and understand. And I don't need now to get the IT guys in to decipher it. It looks in kind of the same format as a barcode. So the interesting timing of all of this is, you know, RFID's been around a while. We're still struggling, I think, to adopt it within our supply chain in healthcare, and for some of the reasons I just mentioned. But most importantly, we submitted a project on behalf of the Johnson & Johnson supply chain on what we've done med device with RFID. And I think we actually won the healthcare track last week, which I'm super proud of, because we've got a team of global folks that are rolling out not just RFID to help our supply chain, but doing it in that standard way, all the way down to saying, this is what should be on the RFID tag. So when a customer anywhere in the supply chain reads it, it's predictable. You know, it's UHF passive. I think that's the best defined, you know, technology we have out there. I think as kind of we move forward, if I think about the challenges, you know, leveraging what we have there in the supply chain, the challenges within healthcare and the supply chain, I don't think are specific to us, but again, because of our complicated supply chain and all the hands that a product moves through, we have to really consider some of these newer technologies that are coming out. And you know, I see Peter on the phone, I lean on GS1 a lot, you know, J&J leads on GS1 a lot to help us. I mean, it could be something as simple as vision systems and Bluetooth technology, GPS devices, and who knows what else is coming. RFID has its standalone infrastructure, which I think is a little bit different to adoption of it, but some of these other technologies that are floating to the surface from a sensor world to create this Internet of Things really needs to be standardized on, well, how do I read it? How do I, the EPCIS is great, right? How do I transfer data? But what are the common things that I need to do for my pinch point in the supply chain? And then how do I hand that data off to the rest of it? So I'll stop talking, give the mic back to you, but I think that's really key to adopting technology. And the end result is, the more technology you have, the safer it is, because it's easier to grab data. It's easier to check for things. And it's really a driver to patient safety.
Yeah, it certainly is. And it looks like it's getting broad adoption across the wide variety of industries. Maybe Steve could comment on what are some of the industries other than healthcare where brain RFID has really made an impact and has really sort of transformed the business.
Yeah, so I mentioned some of the industries just now, and the big driver at the moment, I would say, is probably the retail industry. Last year alone, there were 18.5 billion with a B, tag ICs shipped. That means 18.5 billion items being identified by the technology. So the big user, as I say, right now is retail. In particular, it's apparel. If you go into a Kohl's, a JCPenney's, a Marks and Spencer's, a Decathlon, you'll find RAIN, passive UHF, RFID tags on everything. And they're using it because they understand the benefits it's giving them. Blair mentioned the Walmart theme back in 2008 or whatever it was. And yeah, the technology wasn't ready, and it was, the ask was wrong. And today what we're finding is that identifying items is exactly what the technology really can do. And the technology, of course, has improved over the years, and we see much better performance, much lower price points, all of those things. And it just allows everything to move forward. So retail has taken it on in a big way. But there are other industries that are really, really big. The automobile manufacturing industry is using it very, very heavily. You'll probably find, if you were to look at your car, you'd be surprised at how many things have got tags on them in that car, because the automobile manufacturers understand it's really important to know where all their stuff is, when it's going to arrive, where is it installed on the car, and all of those things. The aviation industry, perhaps not the best topic to talk about in our current times. But last year, IATA, which is the organization that governs the aviation industry, passed a resolution that said all bag tags will be identified with RAIN RFID. And okay, so it's not happened quite as fast as we all hoped it was going to happen, because the airline industry is in a bad way right now. But for those of you that travel on Delta, you've probably already used it. They were the first to really adopt it in a big way so that you can know that your bag is on the plane with you and when it's going to come off the plane and all of those great things. So there are lots of industries out there doing things, and I think it's really important to understand the benefits it can give to you. Both Blair and Gwen have talked a little bit about the benefits they see from the healthcare world. Think about food right now. We're seeing massive interest in tagging food all the way from the farm, all the way through the distribution chain, all the way into the home, so that people can know the history of the food they're buying, that it's fresh, that it was in a refrigerated container when it was shipped. And the nice thing about the technology is it allows you to interface sensors with it, and you can actually monitor the temperature or the humidity or whatever it is that's really important from the rain tag. And it's a very inexpensive way of moving forward. So we really are seeing a lot of interest right now. We're expecting a lot of other interest very, very soon. There are some very, very big projects on their way. We expect by 2025 that Japan quite likely will be using tags on all of the items in their convenience stores. They're talking about 100 billion tags a year. So you can see, I just told you it was 18.5 billion last year, and by 2025 we could be talking about 100 billion a year going into one application alone.
Yeah, I think the adoption curve is going to be pretty steep on this stuff because of all of the applications that you talked about. I mean, in just in automotive, for example, because of the use of the technology, the assembly lines have become much more flexible in being able to produce lots of different kinds of cars, because with the tags you can sequence all of the different parts into those particular vehicles as they come down the line. So just that information.
If you've ever been to a car manufacturing plant, it's not like Henry Ford thought about it, with everything being made exactly the same all the way down the line. There's this model and that model and red ones and green ones and specials and all the rest of it all coming down the line at the same time.
That's right. It is pretty remarkable to see. We have a couple of plants in Lansing, and I was kind of shocked to see the diversity of vehicles coming through, and exactly the right parts go into the right vehicle every time. I mean, it's pretty extraordinary. One of the questions that I'm interested in answer to is for Dr. Scott. What's the impact on the University of Chicago's pharmacy as companies like Fresenius Kabi add a smart label to their products? So what's the impact there? I mean, you're obviously starting to engage in that. What kind of impact, financial, on staff, broadly speaking? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, we're very excited about that technology and then being able to utilize that technology in that kind of way with having those tags already embedded in the medication labeling. From an operations perspective, we focus a lot on efficiency, whether that's with our staff and our operations, and we also focus a lot on what's our ROI and trying to maintain a good cost of operation in terms of where we're spending our resources. And so I think this helps us on both fronts. We were a pretty early adopter of RFID technology at the University of Chicago a few years ago, relatively speaking, in terms of pharmacy operations in general. And so in current state, a lot of the tagging and using the technology to get the safety and the tracking advantages and the data comes from us having to manually tag everything that we use in that capacity. And right now we're using a lot of that in our procedural areas where we do our surgeries, which are high risk areas. So we want to make sure we've got our proper safety procedures in place there. And so not having to spend the time, allocating technicians and pharmacists to tagging medications, setting up the labels, programming the labels, actually applying the physical tag to each product. We're in a procedural area where we're using thousands of medications a week. And so having to remove that from my staff in terms of manual labor to do that and helping them reassign that activity into more value-added work is really huge for us. And so that's one of the big exciting points that we have in terms of why we want to adopt some of this technology and what benefits we get with having those embedded in the label. Essentially, we're also eliminating a lot of safety risks in terms of human error. We're relying on in current state, one person has to tag, another person who's an independent party has to come in and check that tag to make sure things were applied and programmed correctly. Even though you've got a two-party system there, there's still opportunity for error and, risk there with the wrong medication going out or something being, tagged with the wrong lot number or expiration date or things that may seem pretty benign, but can really hurt us if we need to track a medication's administration or see if something was recalled or see what actually got to the patient from a scanning perspective. And also getting that data so we can see what our utilization rates are for our medications in the procedural areas as well. And so, this technology coming in this form with it being already having the smart label on the product really goes a long way to help us with efficiency, cost reduction, seeing that true ROI in terms of bringing in this technology and seeing the benefits there. And we hope to see that, expanded and become an industry norm within, as fast of a time frame as possible. But we're excited about the benefits that brings to us from a pharmacy department perspective.
And staff has had pretty strong acceptability of what you're doing. I mean, they've bought into the anesthesiologists, physicians, staff folks have bought in.
Yeah, they love it. It's technology that they've actually been able to utilize in the OR rooms as well. Right now, we do a lot of scanning in our satellite pharmacy locations, but, even with the new technology now, instead of having an arbitrary tag kind of sticking off the product of a vial or, a tablet or a bottle of cream or ointment or something of that nature, with it being embedded, it's less of a visual distraction from the actual labeling and safety precautions on the product itself. So, that's going to be an even bigger improvement in terms of safety and, helping that to be adopted regularly. So, it's been something that's been well received here. So we look forward to, continuing that trend and expanding the use of that technology to get those benefits.
One of the attendees is interested in sort of the journey that Fresenius has gone on for implementing this kind of technology. How did you come to this decision to do this, and were there some fits and starts? Did it go smoothly all the way, or kind of what was the genesis of the decision making and kind of how it evolved?
So how it really started was a visit of our leadership team of Fresenius to University of Chicago and watching
there you go.
manual processes going on there. And they visited other hospitals as well and saw this manual process, and we knew we could do something about it. As one of the largest injectable manufacturers, we have the skill to be able to do this, and so we wanted to do it for our customers, for safety, and for efficiency.
Wonderful. So you partnered then with Chicago early on to kind of get a feel for kind of what they were doing and the challenges they had and what they were going through, and said, hey, there's got to be a better way.
Yes.
And so you just started the innovation process and moved forward in that regard. So pretty impressive development in terms of building those partnerships is always really vital. Another question I have is aimed at Blair. How important are standards and interoperability for healthcare? So how important are these standards in this interoperability issue?
My personal experience and, going back in the history of RFID and similar to, Gwen, we have a history on why we implemented RFID and it all stemmed off of our customers asking us for help. And unfortunately for, other than the last 5 years, 10 years prior to that, every request that came into us was for a different flavor of RFID. Sometimes it was, HF tag, sometimes it was UHF. It was closed source systems. They came to us not with just a request, but a vendor in mind. And I don't know, most of us work for large companies. There's like 7 firewalls and, putting somebody else's PC in the middle of a distribution center connected to the J&J network is just not going to happen. So there's all kinds of reasons why we failed those first 10 years. So I think the importance of standards really is, indicative of why we succeeded in the last 5. So we now have sort of an RFID platform that's sits on top of GS1. It's not anything new for us. RFID is a different technology, but GS1 is not anything different for us. We have, you know, a good partnership with that standards organization, and we look for them to help and guide us as these new sensors and technologies come out, so that we, you know, can be interoperable. The idea of putting an RFID tag on a product that can only be read with proprietary software or with particular hardware is, or has secret information on it that needs a decoder ring, you know, to you know, understand what's there. So relying on what GS1 tells us to do, I have found, you know, I'm not really, you know, personally, even though I'm an engineer, following the rules all the time is kind of boring, but I have found with GS1 over the last 5 years of this journey with RFID that everything that's documented is so thoughtful, and there's a reason why it's particularly mentioned in this way or that way, and why it tells you not to do this or to do that instead, because it has long-standing effects for interoperability of the supply chain. If we put a tag on a product and as someone understands GS1, they should be able to read that RFID tag at any place in the supply chain. It's not, you know, tied down, and it's not, there's no secret information on it, and it follows the standard encoding, so that we can not only, you know, respond to a customer's engagement requesting, you know, RFID, but we can also provide that next customer with the ability to use RFID because it's already there. So it'd be almost like if we could go back to, I was at the 1970s, late 60s with the barcode. And if we could say, we have a lot of barcodes in the GS1 standards now, and they're all standard, but if we could just maybe have a few. If we could all go back and do that again, that's where we are with RFID right now and some of these sensor technologies. Now's our chance to get our arms around it. And quite honestly, a barcode scanner, which this does, my phone here does that too. You know, I can scan barcodes with it. It's an inexpensive way to identify our product, and it is still a technology that's out there. The more we get into the fancier technologies, the ones that are faster, that provide more data, that don't have to have a product in hand to scan, the Wi-Fi can read it, the GPS can read it. It's expensive. It gets more expensive to have that infrastructure around you, and that data becomes expensive and immense too. So not only do we have to standardize on the technology, but we have to standardize on the data. And all of this comes together, and it's very thoughtful in like a global standard group like GS1, and they've thought about it. So with Gwen, you know, that's the secret to the sauce, right? Interoperability here is key to adopting these technologies, and they should be looked at from the end-to-end supply chain perspective.
In the last session, we had some folks talking about pushing the envelope on the RAIN RFID technology in terms of what we would ask the chips to be able to do. And it's not only the technical tracking and tracing, but trying to determine the qualitative features of the product itself. Is it expired? Temperature issues, all kinds of other issues related to that. Are you guys, and I'll just throw this out to everybody, is this something of value to have to start to really push the envelope on what kinds of data the chips are capable of reading? And are you folks investing in some of that research currently? Anybody?
I'll jump in to start if you like. I mean,
sure.
The RAIN technology itself is just a data carrier. It's a way of reading data in the same way that a barcode is a data carrier. So the nice thing about RAIN is it's available in lots of different memory configurations. So you can buy chips that store enough memory, not just to do the unique ID, but to store the lot number, the time it was produced, all of those other things that you might need to do exactly what you're talking about. So there really isn't a limit on the technology. The limit comes in how you want to use the technology to do what you're doing. And I think the benefits there are really good, but you probably want to walk before you run. You really need to get yourself established with a system that can identify the products that you've got so that you know where they are, what their expiry date is, the basic things. Then you can look at doing all of the extra things that you might like to do. and it comes at a very little cost. You've got to encode some extra information on the tag, and that's really what it is. I liked what Dr. Scott was talking about, that they were actually putting the tags on the things and encoding them and all the rest of it. What we really need is what Gwen and Blair are talking about, where they're providing the stuff with it already encoded. And that takes the emphasis for doing a lot of this work away from the pharmacists or the nurses in the hospital or whatever, and allows them to get on with their own job instead of worrying about the products that are there. And the technology is, sorry, Blair.
No, just to really add to what you're saying there, Steve, and I'm a big proponent of use that RFID tag or that sensor as an identifier. Don't try to make it an encyclopedia of information, unless you have to, right? I mean, unless you can't. But we live in such an interconnected world that there should be a prolific database in the cloud somewhere where if I have an RFID tag and I identify it, I can ping that cloud and find out all kinds of things about it. Don't try to put that data onto the device if you don't have to. I think the smart thing for us to think about is how to use that interconnected world to make our RFID technology smarter and to alert us to things. So if folks are, updating, it's like a recalled product. If a product gets recalled in the middle of the supply chain, that interconnected cloud knows about it. And if I identify it and go to that cloud and I get a message back, so as soon as I touch that product or read it, that it's recalled. Maybe not the best positive example, but definitely a way to secure the supply chain. Suspect product, that's another reason for it. I will say that, my day job is all about serialization. The RFID stuff is fun, and we get to combine those two together. But these regulations that are coming out are really creating those databases for us. So, I think one of the challenges out there for the supply chain is how do we use that information and how do we connect with it with different technologies like this? And then all that data, resides up in a cloud somewhere. Unfortunately, there's not a global database, available to us for all of these different country regulations. We put out there for serialization in particular, track and trace. But we do have a lot of standing databases now. I think that may be a start for us.
Dr. Scott, I assume your hospital, I don't know much about the University of Chicago Medical Center, but I assume you have satellite locations and lots of different places that sort of combine into your center. What are you seeing in terms of the acceptability of this kind of technology across the full range of organizations, clinics, and so forth that you work with, maybe medical practices and others that you work with? Are they all sort of coming together around some of the standard platforms that you're proposing? I guess I'm looking for this proliferation issue.
Yeah, I think we still got a long way to go there. We are kind of considering our department as an early adopter, and there's a lot of things that we would like to see that I think are coming but are not there yet. But from that perspective, I think when we, Steve and Blair mentioned some good points earlier about interoperability, and I think we've got some ways to go there before it becomes a want or standard practice of use amongst those different locations. We've kind of got a distribution model that's almost a hub and spoke, where we are the hub. And so as we're sending medications out, there's not a ton of incentive for us to force and drive RFID technology use if the receiving locations, the hospitals, the clinics, the offsite outpatient areas can't utilize the technology, or they don't have the scanners, or they don't have the proper infrastructure to be able to take advantage of the data that they're getting with those. And so from a value perspective, we're not going to be pushing a lot of additional costs without the additional benefits of the efficiency and safety. So I think we're getting there. We've got some ways to go. And I think, with companies like Fresenius and J&J being the industry leaders and actually pushing that and making that the standard of practice within the industry, I think we'll get there sooner rather than later. And it's up to us as not just healthcare leaders, but, whether it's supply chain or nursing or, respiratory or other different departments that are using inventory and medications and other tools to provide patient care, that they keep that demand going and figure out a way to make sure that the data is being able to be shared transparently and equally across departments, whether you're inpatient, outpatient, or regardless of the practice setting.
Well, as a supply chain person, I work a lot with the supply chain department. And of course, Axia is very heavily involved in a number of industries. Global logistics is another one that we're working with where technology is vital. But my interest is really thinking about how this technology starts to disseminate beyond medication to tagging patients, tagging equipment, tagging all kinds of things in a hospital inventory, because you have such an incredibly complex supply chain challenge with all kinds of stuff in inventory. Just inventory management in the hospital has to be just incredibly complex. Are you starting to make some headway there as well with maybe using this technology in other domains?
I would love to see that. I have not seen much outside of in terms of our specific pharmacy department, but I know that we're there. I was just in a Zoom meeting earlier this week, and supply chain was talking about the management inventory of our emergency crash carts and knowing where they are and at what times and have they been restocked and what's in them. And, you know, that's the last thing you want to be thinking about when you've got a patient emergency and you're looking for a cart and medications and supplies that go along with it. So, you know, I think there's definitely a lot of adaptions there that'll help us in that regard. And, you know, I've got maybe a limited sense in terms of what that looks like for pharmacy. And I think there's a lot of opportunities outside of our department with the multidisciplinary team. But we're getting there, but we're just not quite there yet, at least on the healthcare side.
No, it's hard. Steve?
Well, I was going to say, one of the things that Blair mentioned just now was that the J&J won an award at the RFID Journal event last week. One of the other awards that was presented was to the US Patent Office, where they have used brain technology as a means of identifying all of their IT assets in, I think it's 5 or 6 locations around the country, hundreds of thousands of assets, and they've had it installed now for some 18 months, I think it is, and they've saved over $1 million. Their ROI was just unbelievable on the fact that they were actually able to track their assets, to know where they all are. And if you think about an organization like the Patent Office, it may not be quite as complex as a hospital, but we've already seen examples of hospitals going out and doing exactly this. Perhaps one of the biggest hospitals around is the new university hospital in Aarhus, Denmark, where they designed a new hospital based around technology, so that they have all of their savings from day one. And that you can read some of the case studies on the RAIN website, but things like a 50% reduction in time searching for assets. Just imagine what that means to nurses if they don't have to spend all that time looking for things. They eliminated 200 patient beds, saving about $1.2 million because they were able to use them more efficiently. So the using of technologies like RAIN is going to make massive savings into the healthcare industry. It can't help not provide all of those savings.
Yeah, my history, Steve, is with RFID in healthcare is asset management is the first adopter of RFID, and that as we come in as manufacturers with products, consumable products, and then applying that sort of same technology with a twist, right, to the products that are moving through the hospital. I think it's almost like a phase 2. So I think asset management is very popular. If you were to probably query all hospitals using RFID, I think the majority of them would be using RFID for asset management. And it's a good leverage point, I think, then to talk about, well, how do you do medications and how do you handle medical devices, with the same sort of lens as you're handling your assets. But again, you're talking about, big things, right? Hospital beds and wheelchairs and, the machines they hook you up to in the hospital and where are they? So those are big things. So there is, the twist is now we're talking about products, and in some cases they're, what you can hold in your hands, medication bottles, and vials, and how do we handle all of that too? So same technology, just a different, maybe a smaller lens.
The good news is, of course, that the infrastructure is the same for both. The readers are all exactly the same readers. The difference is the tag that's on the item itself, whereas on a a piece of equipment being used in the hospital. It might be mounted on metal and have to be specially designed to do that. But the tags on the pharmaceuticals all built into the label and are a part of what's going there, but it's still the same infrastructure that's reading it and providing the information into the databases you were talking about.
It's a start. It's definitely a start, and there's definitely some harmony there that we can find to synergy to leverage.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that Kohl's can tell you exactly how many belts they have in their store, how many particular T-shirts they have on the shelf for any particular.
Even better, they can tell you when something is on the wrong shelf.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Get it and put it like on the right shelf, which is really important when you talk about those kinds of
Sure.
things. Same thing in the pharmacy. A technician in the pharmacy accidentally files some drugs on the wrong shelf. You might suddenly think you're out. But in fact, with RFID, you would know that it's there. You'll be able to find it very quickly and easily. And it's things like that can really start making organizations run more efficiently when you have access to the information about the products that are there.
I think we have to be thankful for the retail industry for really helping move that technology along, because I don't think, I mean, Steve, you can speak to this better than the rest of us, but the technology has seen a lot of improvements in the last 5 years, so that we're not as scared of it anymore. I mean, if you're trying to scan a pallet of product and you only get 99% of it, that's a problem. Because then you have to unpack the whole thing and scan all the barcodes anyway. So the read rates were really important, and I think retail is one example really helped us move forward the technology there.
When you look at, I agree completely with what you're saying. I've been involved with RFID since 1996, so I predate a lot of the stuff that we're talking about today. I am an engineer, and I've been very actively involved in the standards world. And when we look at some of the technologies we were trying to get adopted back then, we're way different today than we were back then. And we can do all of the things that we hoped to be able to do in the past. Look at, for example, Decathlon, a big sports store in most of the world. They have over 1,000 stores worldwide. I think the US is about the only country that doesn't really have a lot of stores in it. But those 1,000 stores are 100% driven by RAIN RFID. Every single item in those stores has a tag on it. They use it not just for inventory, but for tracking their whole supply chain, right back to their manufacturers, right through to the point of sale. The whole thing is driven by the technology. And if you talk to people from the company, they'll tell you that they wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things they're doing now if they didn't have the technology to help them do it. And I think that's what we've got to think about in healthcare. We need technology to help us. And the technology is now there, it's capable. It's just a matter of adopting it.
You know, somebody in the last session made the point that Amazon's success was that they first designed a technology platform and then said, all right, now we can just heap businesses onto the technology platform. So you design the platform to generically take lots of businesses. What if we were to design healthcare and not have to retrofit everything? But we said, here's the technology platform. Let's design the healthcare systems and start to add into this so that we can coordinate and manage all of the massive amount of information that's sort of flowing in and out of the system, because it's almost to the case where you just can't afford not to keep track of everything and be able to manage these assets efficiently. I mean, you know, how much can we afford to mismanage, I guess, an organization? So you guys have all took a stand on that and said, you know, we have to sort of stick a stake in the ground on this issue and be able to better manage all of the things that we're moving forward with. I mean, Gwen, you guys have been one of the early adopters in that. Did you see lots of other companies sort of following suit with what you guys are doing?
You know, any pharma company can do exactly what we're doing, and anticipate more will follow. You know, the more companies that manufacture RFID-enabled medications using the prevailing, you know, open global GS1 standards, the more innovations that it will follow. You know, for us, our mission is caring for life, and as one of the largest injectable manufacturers in this country, we have a huge responsibility to ensure our products can be read by any system, by any customer, by any supply chain or technology partner in the US or abroad. And, we do that now along with the rest of pharma by using GS1 barcode standards. And we can use this, using the existing GS1 RFID standards allows us to do the same really in any other pharmaceutical company. And it's really important that we all use the same data encoding standards for interoperability, accessibility, accuracy, and safety. And we can keep our competitive edge, in other ways, obviously by manufacturing high-quality generic drugs. But it's all of our responsibility to ensure that our patients and caregivers receive the medications they need. And competition, should not get in the way of that, obviously.
And are you extending this to non-prescription drugs as well? I mean, to sort of off-the-shelf kinds of things? Is it starting to proliferate for your company beyond just the prescription kinds of things?
So we only manufacture prescription
Okay.
medications, and I think our friends at J&J could probably give you a little bit more information about prescription.
Yeah, that's probably true. Are you guys, Blair, moving to off-the-shelf stuff?
So I think that's the consumer part of our business. So yes, but in a different way. And I think when you start talking about consumer-facing products, right? So the OTC lines that we have, folks want to use their phones, right? They want to get coupons and use QR codes and things that they're used to seeing. And that's all about RFID, right? It's just different kinds of RFID. But leveraging what I think Apple and the Android devices have done, they allow us to, do those things with our phones. So I think you probably all have experienced that. I even know there's some wine bottles that I don't know if it's just silly, but you can interact with wine bottles, right? And it's sort of the, same type of interaction and experience. I think as far as identifying products and making sure that those products are moving within our supply chain, really protecting the safety of our patients, is a little bit of a different push and pull, right, within med device and the pharmaceutical sector, because we have some bad players in there. We all are with an end result, and a common point at the end of our supply chain is that patient. And Dr. Scott gets really close to that. So I think we have some regulations out there, not to lean too much on our heavily regulated industry that we work in, but we do have lots of regulations out there that are good, right, to protect that. And I think technology like this, with the regulation comes in additional requirements to do things. And I think that starts to affect the customer as well. And so within the pharmaceutical business, we have, different regulations around the world that are all rolled out slightly differently. I think there'd be a great academic study for someone to look at which one is, if I could create an ideal track and trace environment, which one would I pick, or what combination of the ones out there would I choose? Because I really think that the reliance on technology and that piece of it is really picking up. So, and the need for it, it can really help us stay compliant and protect our patients. I am interested a little bit to see what the rest of the panel, I don't know, William, if it's okay to ask a question, but we've talked a lot about RFID, and there's other sensor technologies out there. And I think they're a creative space with vision systems and GPS and Bluetooth, and what the thoughts from the rest of the panel are on those evolving technologies, because I think they're all sensing, right? We went from barcode to RFID, but what's next?
What's next? Yeah. Gwen, do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, I have plenty of thoughts. I feel like, really whatever we do, we really should always keep, patients and caregivers at top of mind as technology is rolling out, to ensure that technology, whether it's vision or chain or whatever it might be, is safe, easily accessible, affordable, and interoperable using open global standards. I see patients and caregivers tapping medication with their phone and identifying it instantly. Information from pharmaceutical products wirelessly transmitted through its journey from plant to patient through all kinds of strategic read point, whether it's Internet of Things or blockchain or computer vision or RFID. But I think at the end of the day, it's really all about the caregiver and the patient making sure it works for them.
Right. Dr. Scott, are you guys experimenting with anything beyond RFID? I mean, are you guys doing anything else?
I think, at least from my perspective, I would like to see a lot more capabilities in terms of how we're using the RFID technology. You know, Blair mentioned earlier, track and trace, that's a regulatory requirement that a lot of organizations are either outsourcing to a vendor or paying additional costs to manage that, to be in compliance with the FDA rulings there. So, you know, is there opportunities with the data and the tags to in-source that or manage that internally with your purchasing team or with your pharmacy management team, you know, on the healthcare side? You know, you mentioned earlier, William, about temperature control and some needs from the previous discussion about that. So, you know, if we're ordering these high cost pharmaceuticals and biosimilars and medications that are, you know, in excess of, you know, 6 figures, we want to make sure that the chain of custody has been, you know, controlled all the way through from point of sale to, you know, point of entry. You know, we want to make sure that all the storage conditions and, you know, if it's a controlled substance, was it, you know, minimal risk for diversion based on the stakeholders that were involved in the shipping and, you know, delivery and the bins and who's signing for it and those kind of things like that. And I think, you know, there's hopefully down the line potential with RFID tags to give us that data and give us some, you know, some peace of mind there that how we think our processes are working in terms of those control points that we have in place as we rely on multiple vendors within the supply chain, that those are all true and the data can show that. So, you know, I just think the uses and the implementations are endless. And, you know, as we look from a ROI perspective and efficiency perspective, I think there's a lot of opportunity to in-source some of those management strategies within the organizations that we all respectively work for, if we can manage that and get that data appropriately.
Does RFID add a lot of cost to medications? Is it costly to add chips, or does the price come down so that the medication costs generally don't change much, or how does that work?
It's costly per se. I mean, it's definitely added costs. So that's something that as leaders, you've got to kind of factor into how does that manage within your budgets and things of that nature. I think there's some economies of scale to be had there as well. So if you're using this on a grander scale throughout your inventories and departments within all of your different pharmacy locations, especially if you're a larger organization, there's some benefit to doing that versus if you're maybe a smaller organization and you've got to, you know, you got to segregate your stock because you want your RFID stock only going to certain locations and your non-RFID stock going to other locations. You've got to balance out the, you know, the time and the energy is going to be spent there versus how much it's going to cost for you there. But, you know, I think as this becomes more adopted amongst manufacturers and companies that are putting out these products with these tags already with them, you know, you'll see the costs start to come down just due to competition and due to the scale of the use. And I think that's, you know, that's going to be good for all the end users and buyers on the other side of the equation long term. So, so it is some added cost, but, you know, we try to look at that as what's our ROI and what benefit are we getting with the added cost to justify that and to make sure that it's being, you know, managed appropriately. And so that's where, you know, that's our approach to that.
Right. So the costs seem to be justified. The additional maybe unit cost gets leveraged over just greater efficiency and better inventory management, and it's just an overall reduction of costs in a variety of other areas because of the better management is kind of the idea.
Yeah, I can spend 10 cents to add a tag on a medication, but I've got enough data now to be able to manage trays so where I can reduce the tray inventory cost by 30%, which is likely going to be more than what I'm paying for the tag. It pays for itself and further. So, you know, you got to look at it on a global scale versus looking at it in segments because it tells a story from start to finish that you've got to make sure you've got a good understanding of.
Yeah, I will add to that, Dr. Scott, is like looking at the implementation at a point in the supply chain and realizing, you know, cost improvements or you know, reducing errors. It's always better or easier to justify an investment in technology when you're looking at more than just one point in the supply chain, especially if it can be used throughout. The challenge then becomes is the old adage about boiling the ocean, right? That it's difficult then to take a step forward because it's so much bigger the project is than what you had originally, you know, gone after. But I think that is one of the adoption, you know, deterrents with technology is that it does have broader interoperable, you know, wins. But usually when we implement the technology, we're looking at just one particular point in the supply chain.
One of the one of the attendees asked the question, would RFID supplied by the manufacturer help eliminate counterfeit drugs entering the market, which would ultimately improve their business? I mean, does it help the counterfeiting issue? I would imagine it would.
Well, I mean, I think, and Gwen can help me here, right? I mean, there's something to be said. The counterfeiting is dangerous, right? So just one instance that could be bad for a patient is worth it, right? You know, when you think about it from a human life and a patient perspective. But, you know, that's not really what goes into the business case. You know, the reduction in counterfeit and increasing the security. I don't know, Gwen, if you want to add anything else. So that's always on the tops of our minds, right? Is making sure that we're being as secure and safe as possible. But the bad guys are getting smarter too, so we have to stay ahead of it. Right,
and RFID can definitely help a pharmaceutical company authenticate whether or not it's there's a counterfeit, you know, drug that's reached a customer. There's ways of identifying certain portions of data on the tag and matching it up. You can do that with the pharmaceutical companies. You can ping the pharmaceutical companies and ask if something's counterfeit much easier with RFID. So it does have a lot of authentication capabilities that barcodes just don't.
The other side of that is to think about the problems that the pharmaceutical market has with grey market goods and things. And the technology can certainly help in the same way that it can identify counterfeits. It can help identify grey market things, where they've come from. Perhaps they've come from a route into the pharmacy that perhaps it shouldn't have done. May not be the same quality drugs or something. I mean, so just using the technology to do that can find so many more benefits than perhaps you were originally thinking about when you started this project. When I go back and look at some of the retail projects that have been done, there was a focus on inventory, and they found so many other things that they've gained from by using the technology that it's just made it so much better for them.
Yeah, I would say in the medical device sector, serialization, which is the ability, right, to be able to tell the difference of one product out of the whole batch that was made. In the med device sector, there's not a lot of serialization happening. So that part of the healthcare supply chain can really benefit from RFID because it does provide serialization embedded with RFID. So that's one example of something that you might not be going after, but there anyway, to really protect the supply chain more. I think you can't go wrong with technology. It's just really finding that right balance to get it approved. Yeah.
My final question for the group to think about deals with sort of the broader system. If we think 5 to 10 years out, what will healthcare look like as it expands this sort of tracking and tracing and understanding and having devices talk to each other, have medications talk to each other? In the automotive industry, I know robotics have pretty much taken over because things can talk to each other and coordinate very accurately on how things work. It's funny, you take a tour and you see little robot vehicles taking parts to different stations and so forth because stuff just talks to each other. I mean, is that the future of healthcare? So if you could comment a little bit about where you see this future going, is just beyond the traceability. Is it really expanding into some of these other things where you have kind of a smart system that is able to take advantage of a lot of other technologies, not just tracing and tracking medications? Anybody?
So I'll start. Yes, absolutely. I think that the technology is going to lead us into places that we just don't even think about right now. Obviously, the human parts of the hospital, the pharmacy, are never going to go away. But it's our job to find technical ways to make their job much easier, to make it so that they can concentrate on the human aspects of what they're doing. I was fortunate enough to be allowed to watch the procedures in an operating theater, and watching the nurses have to pay attention to what things they were bringing into the operating theater, who was going to have to pay for these drugs or items that were being used, stents or whatever it was, and worrying about the paperwork side of things instead of being able to get on and do their job as a nurse. And that's what I think technology is going to enable for us. Things like RAIN can take all of that away. Members of the Alliance right now, people who are working in our work group, provide products that take away a lot of those problems from you already. Give you the ability to go out, take something from a cabinet, the cabinet knows what's been taken, it knows it went into operating room 3, it knows that Steve Halliday is in operating 3, therefore he will be charged for this item. And the nurses don't have to worry about those things anymore. So it gives the nurse, the doctor, the pharmacist, the chance to do their job instead of worrying about all of the things that go along with it right now.
Yeah, exactly. Others, where do you see things progressing in this space?
So I think we're collectively in a space where we're trying to drive down costs in the supply chain, and we don't want to do that at the deficit of safety. So technology is right to provide a win-win. So the more data you have, and I think Steve mentioned it, right? We're seeing RFID data being easier to achieve, and now you can benchmark and share and set new standards and drive cost improvements within the healthcare sector that maybe traditionally hasn't, been pushed as much. I think, the big businesses, we see that every day, right? Year over year, we're challenged with cost improvement ideas, and it's really just part of our bio. We have to contribute back on an individual basis and as organizations. So, it's our job to help, drive some of that efficiency, because I think for our healthcare recipients of all of our products, that they're at the end of the supply chain. So it's up to us to try to partner with them to drive down that end-to-end cost. And I think technology, we're at a right spot for that to happen. I think I agree with everything that you said. I would love to say that we have a smarter world out there, a smarter world of things, and all that data, finding a good way to use it and do things with it. In 5 years, I think you'll see a lot more sensors, out in, whether it's just RFID or if it's other areas too, out in use in our supply chain.
Yeah, I've been imagining a surgical environment where you just say, Alexa, please do that surgery on that patient, make them well,
Maybe they can
All of a
come to the
sudden.
house and we don't even need to go anywhere then.
Yeah, right. Just have Alexa solve all of our problems in the hospital. I'm sure that's what we would all love to have. Well, I want to thank everybody for their contributions today. This is an extraordinarily important problem. We know from our opening conversation with Chris Jerry about how important this particular issue is. And so I want to thank everybody for really taking a really important piece of this issue and driving it home and providing for our audience all of the different options that are available. And you've provided ways of getting started and really providing resources for people as well. So thanks very much. I'm now going to turn it over to Catherine Franz, who will provide some closing comments and kind of how Axia will participate in the future. Catherine?
Well, this has been an extremely valuable day, full of thought-provoking ideas. Sincere thanks to our speakers, our panelists, sponsors, Bill Donahue, and the entire Axia team. If this were a major conference, we'd be giving you a huge round of applause, so thank you very much. This is intended to be the beginning of a revolution in patient safety, and this will be the first in a series of events. Going forward, we will be demonstrating real-world examples with our Institute partners and sharing with everyone how this can work in your organizations. Finally, we'll be sending all registrants an email with a short session survey, more information about how you can become a member of our consortium. This consortium we're building to secure the medical supply chain. And as we've discussed today, this is critically important and we encourage you to join us on this journey. Thanks so much for your time and interest.